All right, let's just jump right into this. For centuries, we've been told a certain story by science, a story that says we're, well, cosmologically insignificant. As one thinker famously put it, we're just chemical scum on some tiny rock. But what if that whole story is wrong? Today we're going to dig into a really radical argument from the physicist David Deutsch, and it flips this entire idea on its head. It suggests that people, you and me, we might just be the most significant thing in the entire universe.
First, just take a look at this image. What do you see? To the naked eye, it looks like a bunch of faint, kind of fuzzy dots, right? But what you're actually looking at is the coma cluster. In reality, every single one of those little smudges is an entire galaxy, home to billions of stars. And this, right here, is a perfect example of our first big idea: the huge difference between appearance and reality. What seems to be true often isn't. So this quote gets to the heart of the story we're usually told. It's an idea called the principle of mediocrity. And it basically says there's nothing special about us. We live on a typical planet, orbiting a typical star in a totally typical galaxy. You get the picture. In the grand cosmic scheme of things, we're basically a rounding error, an insignificant chemical reaction. And this is the central idea we are going to challenge.
I mean, this feeling of being demoted has been a running theme in science for a long time. First, Copernicus comes along and shows we're not the center of the solar system. Then, astronomers figured out our sun is just one of billions of stars. It feels like every big discovery just pushes us further and further into cosmic irrelevance. But is that the whole story? To really answer that, we first need to take a step back and ask a more basic question. How do we actually know anything at all?
Okay, so let's tackle a huge common sense idea. We could call it the myth of experience. It's the notion that all of our knowledge comes directly from what we see and do, from our experiences. And look, it seems intuitive, right? But Deutsch argues this is a massive misconception. And understanding why it's a myth, well, that's the key to unlocking our true place in the universe.
So let me ask you a really simple question. How do you know, for sure, that the sun is going to rise tomorrow? I mean, the obvious answer is, you've seen it happen every single day of your life, so you just expect that pattern to continue. But that's not actually what's happening inside your mind. It's something much more powerful.
On one hand, you've got the common sense view. This is basically just assuming the future will look like the past. But the real reason you're so confident about tomorrow's sunrise is because you have a good explanation. You have a theory about a spinning planet, our Earth, orbiting a star. And that theory, that explanation, it doesn't just explain why the sun appears to rise, it lets you predict things you've never ever seen, like a solid 6-month day at the North Pole.
And if you need a perfect example of this, just think about New Year's Eve 1999. Nobody alive at that moment had ever experienced a year that started with the number 20. If our knowledge was just about repeating the past, we'd have had no clue what to expect. But of course, we all knew the year 2000 was coming. Why? Because our theories about calendars and numbers have reach. They explain way more than what we've just observed. And here's the crucial point. Knowledge isn't about repeating experiences. It's about creating good explanations.
Okay, keeping that idea in mind, that explanations have reach, let's go after the second big myth. And this one's a biggie. It's the idea of spaceship Earth. You've probably heard this metaphor. It's this popular, kind of comforting idea that our planet is this perfectly balanced, self-contained life support system just taking care of us.
I mean, here's the classic definition. It's a nice image, isn't it? That we're all just passengers on this perfectly tuned little ship, floating through the hostile void of space. The biosphere gives us everything we need. It's a lovely thought. But according to Deutsch, this comforting idea isn't just wrong. It's the literal opposite of the truth.
Now that is a shocking statement. Just let that sink in for a second. The Earth's biosphere, in its natural, raw state, is not a life support system for us. In fact, it's incredibly hostile. Without our specific knowledge, without clothes, fire, shelter, a human being wouldn't last very long at all.
So how in the world do we survive? Well, it's really a three-step process. First, the planet gives us the raw materials. The atoms, the energy, the basics. But the second and most important step is human explanatory knowledge. It's our ideas about farming, medicine, building tools, hygiene. That's the magic ingredient that transforms those raw materials into a habitable world for us. We don't just live in a life support system, we use our ideas to create one.
And this is where it all comes together. This gets to the very core of the argument. If knowledge, not just experience, is the key, and if our knowledge is what actually creates our environment, then what does that say about us? Well, this is where we start to see the incredible significance, the cosmic reach of people. Think about the llama for a second. It's a super useful animal, but you only find it in the Andes Mountains. A geographer might look at the hot, steamy lowlands between the Andes and Central America and say, see, there's a physical barrier. That's what stopped it from spreading. But is that the real explanation?
Now contrast the llama with what Polynesian traders did. They faced a way more intimidating barrier, the entire Pacific Ocean. And they crossed it, taking their livestock with them. So what was the difference? It wasn't geography. The difference was an idea. The Polynesians had the knowledge, the boldness, the imagination to see that something useful over here could also be useful way over there. It's people's ideas, not physical barriers, that truly determine what's possible.
This all leads to this incredibly powerful term Deutsch uses to describe what people are: universal constructors. See, every other organism is basically a factory for turning very specific resources into more of itself. But humans, we can transform anything into anything, as long as it's allowed by the laws of physics. The only thing we need is the right knowledge. It's how we turn sand into computer chips, rock into skyscrapers, and plain old water into clean energy.
So, if we are these universal constructors with a potentially infinite ability to create knowledge, where does that leave us? What leads to this profound new way of looking at problems and at the very nature of progress itself? Now, that might sound a little pessimistic at first, but I'm telling you it's maybe the most optimistic statement in this entire explainer. What it means is that every time we solve a problem, the solution creates new and usually better problems to solve. Progress isn't some journey to a problem-free paradise, it's a permanent, open-ended journey of problem solving. It's the engine of infinite creation. And Deutsch adds this for emphasis. This isn't just a phase we're going through. It is a fundamental truth about who we are and our relationship with the cosmos. Our purpose isn't to find some final state of rest, but to be engaged in an endless, creative beginning.
And so, this is where we end. Most of the universe, almost all of it, is cold, dark, and empty. It's kind of like an explosive just sitting there waiting for a spark. And knowledge is that spark. People are the only things we know of in the entire universe that can create it. All that physical matter out there is just waiting for the right ideas to come along and transform it into something new, something amazing. The potential is there. The choice is ours.